Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris, and I'm joined with my co-hosts, Zack and Emmett. We're here to just recap the Iowa festivities from last weekend with homecoming and a big win for Michigan State against the Iowa Hawkeyes, and then get into our preview. It's officially Hate Week. It's Michigan Week, our favorite of the year, so we wanted to get in and discuss a little bit of that. So we're excited to have you with us once again. Thanks for joining us. Zack, Emmett, how you guys doing?
Good. How you doing, Emmett?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited for this upcoming matchup.
Yes, same. So before we get into all the fun Michigan stuff, we'll just hit the Iowa win real quick. Strong performance from our Spartans on homecoming. I think we were all pretty pleased with how everything turned out. Really, especially for me, with the ability to hold Caleb Johnson kind of outside of that 75-yard touchdown, we were pretty able to hold him in check. So that was good to see. Final score of that game, for those who did not see, was MSU 32, Iowa 20. Opened up with a quick 12 points from Jonathan Kim, who, by the way, set the program record for most field goals in a game. After that, Iowa scored a touchdown. We traded touchdowns. I know Davison alumni Brendan Sullivan had a 2-yard QB run for Iowa. And then we got some more contributions from Jonathan Kim, and Nate Carter ended up scoring with a 1-yard touchdown run himself. So final score, like I said, 32-20. I'll throw it over to you first, Zach. What was your biggest takeaway from the weekend?
Yeah, so I thought Michigan State overall played probably their best game in a long time, honestly, because the last few years, I think we can honestly say against an opponent like Iowa, they haven't really played a game like this, especially under Mel Tucker. We all remember like those games against Minnesota. And I'm not saying this Iowa team is Minnesota by any chance, but this is kind of the first time that we really played a team kind of our level or a little bit above that. You can honestly say that we were better that night. And while you look at both teams offensively, I think Michigan State has more talent than Iowa. I think you can also argue that defensively Iowa has more talent. Iowa is and has always been really good under Ferentz and Phil Parker as well. He's just one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. I believe his name was even brought up when Jonathan Smith was hired as a possible, trying to get him to East Lansing. Obviously didn't happen, got a nice raise over at Iowa. But when's the last time you've seen Michigan State run for over 200 yards on a defense like Iowa? It's been a really long time. This was kind of that first game that you can kind of say, like, hey, maybe Michigan State's kind of getting back to a little bit of what they were under the D'Antonio days, kind of just hard-nosed, running the ball. And I think that has a lot to do with the coaching staff, because I believe during the broadcast they said that the coaching staff kind of took a look at the last 4 games, especially the offensive line, kind of try to match what offensive line worked the best. And I think they even said that they got maybe a little bit vertical in their zone blocking. So it seems like they kind of fixed that a little bit and were able to run the ball pretty well against this Iowa defense. And passing the ball outside of Aiden Child's one pick, which seems like it was more of a misread of the defense, was more of man instead of zone of what Aiden Childs probably thought. And then the one other interceptable ball that he did throw, I thought Aiden Childs in that second half was probably his best half at Michigan State. I thought he was electric throwing the ball. I thought running the ball, he used his legs extremely well, picked up a big third down in the second half. This was one of those games that you kind of just never really thought that Michigan State was going to kind of lose this game, especially when they got up by 2 scores. It was just kind of like Michigan State had all the momentum in this game, and defensively, like you're saying, Chris, they did a very, very good job of stopping the run outside of the 75-yard touchdown, which only happened late in the fourth quarter, and then MSU does a really great job of responding right after that to kind of put the game away.
Yeah, it was one of those games, like you said, Zach. It felt like we controlled the whole time, and it was really, outgained in every basic statistical category, and then didn't have a punt, which was good. So we were ending the offensive drives with either points or something good. We didn't have to kick the ball away, so that was good to see. The main thing I wanted to point out was the overall the number of plays ran, 70 plays for MSU to 46 on Iowa. If we are going to consistently play teams like the Iowas and the Michigans like that, that's the formula for us winning the game, is pounding the rock, controlling the clock, running more plays, keeping their offense on the field and letting us kind of dictate the flow of the game. And I thought MSU did a great job of that. So, Emmett, Mr. Man in the press box, what did you see?
Okay, so I'll be honest, this game heading into it and overall was probably the most shocking Michigan State victory I have seen since, unexpected, since probably 2020 Michigan. Even when the Spartans beat a ranked Illinois team when they were unranked and looking on the verge of losing bowl eligibility, I still thought maybe something wacky could happen and they could win. This was not what I was expecting heading into the game. Aiden Childs probably had his most complete game of the year. He had a bit of an erratic first quarter, going 4 for 9 with 2 interceptable balls. One of them was picked, obviously. But that was offset by the Michigan State running game, surprisingly, with all 4 scholarship running backs getting at least 1 carry during the first quarter alone, with Frazier and Tolis getting the first real game action in a situation that matters. And then Carter and KLA basically swapped carries. Every time one of them would get a carry, the other running back would take over for them, which kept both running backs extremely fresh. Something that stood out to me when I was looking at the stat sheet, after Child's erratic first quarter, he only threw 3 incompletions the rest of the game. He went, what was the stat? 18 for 21 the rest of the game. So Childs had probably his best performance that we've seen, and that's before you factor in his run game. For the first time since the Boston College game, we really got to see what Aiden Childs could do to a defense when given the opportunity to have these read options, to have these scrambles, and it paid dividends because they had to start playing Child's run, which created more lanes for K'Ron Lynch-Adams, and the team just fed off of that, and it was 12-0 at half. Honestly, felt like it was 24-0, 27-0, because this team just kept driving. The one thing that the team needs to improve on is finishing these drives, obviously, because this weekend against Michigan, the Spartans aren't going to win if they settle for 4 first-half field goals, unless they play the exact replica of Saturday night's game and hold Michigan out of the score column and hold them out of the first down column until midway through the second quarter.
Yeah, I agree, and you can't. As the game started progressing, I was basically thinking the only way Iowa was going to keep themselves in the game is if they could start putting some points on the board and then holding us to field goals instead of touchdowns was keeping that game closer feeling than what it was. It honestly felt to me like Michigan State dominated the game for the most part, but you just knew when you were being held to field goals, it was just one score changes the game completely. So I did think that when Iowa would score, MSU's offense, and credit to Aiden, he did a great job of calming everybody down, getting them back in the flow, and answering right away. Didn't leave any doubt, didn't even try to let Iowa have a shot to get back into the game, because the second they'd score, they'd be going down the field and scoring again. So kudos to
Every
Aiden.
drive they scored was responded with twice a touchdown and once a field goal.
Right, yep. So kudos to Aiden. Kudos to the coaching staff for being able to come up with a game plan that worked to a T. And I think that's your blueprint moving into this week's game too, and we'll talk more about that. But if you play the same way, it's hard to beat this team, to beat this MSU team in general. But for a team like Michigan, who's struggled throwing the ball, to put it nicely, there's your blueprint right there. So Yeah, I thought we just did a really good job, and I know it's kind of boring for the recap purposes, but it was a pretty one-sided game, and I thought we played pretty clean. Penalties, I did think could have been cleaned up a little bit. Some costly ones at times, but again, when you're getting them and you're up that much, it doesn't hurt as bad as it would have, if it's a one-score game or anything like that. So, congrats to the Spartans, Coach Smith. That was a very well put together game plan, for lack of a better term. And then I can't overstate it enough. Jonathan Kim was so impressive. I know he did end up having a miss, but it's nice having a kicker who's completely automatic. Just, hats off, total performance. So I know those who follow me on Twitter, I did the good. We kind of hit it all. The good from the game, Jonathan Kim. I thought Nick Marsh did play really well. I thought our offensive line combo that we trotted out there was able to hold up really well as well. And then Aiden and his efficiency. The bad we touched on was red zone efficiency and penalties. A couple things to clean up for this week, but overall, vibes are good. So would you guys want to add anything about the Iowa game before we transition gears?
I was just going to say, while I do think the red zone efficiency hasn't been great, I do want to also say that I do think this is another game, this Michigan game, and this is maybe how we kind of transition, is that I think you can win this Michigan game by kicking field goals. I'm not saying if you kick like every single field goal, like every time down, I'm not saying that isn't a possibility, but if you kind of do a similar of what you did against Iowa, I think that's going to be a game that you can win. And I think this is kind of doing what Michigan is right now, and that is an offense that continues to struggle with a quarterback that even Sharon Moore didn't even name a starter going into this week. I do think it's going to be Jack Tuttle. I would be shocked if it isn't Jack. I could see maybe Alex Orji playing a little bit in this game. But you look at what this Michigan offense really provides. You have Khalil Mullins that has been run quite a bit recently. I think he had like 3 straight 100-plus games. The last 2 games have been like 80 and 40 yards, so he hasn't been really great the last few games. Not saying he can't be that, but I think he's been kind of getting the ball maybe a little bit too much, possibly. Now I'm saying that it's going to probably completely backfire. You have Donovan Edwards that have had a little bit of fumble issues too. You also look at what Michigan has offensively at the wide receiver position. Is there really anyone that extremely scares you in that wide receiver room? I don't really necessarily think so. Really kind of the only player on this offense outside of kind of the running backs and maybe the offensive line, I think Michigan still has a good offensive line, is Colson Loveland at the tight end position. And that's one thing that I don't think Iowa had, is I thought that overall Cal Haladay actually had a pretty decent performance for how he's been playing lately. This is one of those games I do not think you can play Cal Haladay very much. Now, I know he has a green dot, so he probably will play quite a bit, but I think you're going to have to go with like Jordan Hall, Darius Snow, Wayne Matthews, because what did Michigan do last year that was really efficient? That was take advantage of Cal Haladay over and over and over again. And they did that with Colson Loveland. So if you're going to be Michigan State and you're going up against an offense that has continually struggled to throw the ball down the field, you cannot let their main kind of weapon down the field be efficient in this game. So if you shut down Colson Loveland, if you force Jack Tuttle to throw the ball down the field, we've seen it where they haven't been able to do that this year. Now, is this going to be a game that they could do it? Maybe. But you look at Chuck Brantley, he's been great this year. Secondary overall has been pretty good. Nikai Martinez has been good back there. Malik Spencer has been good back there. Like, this is a game that if you can stop kind of Colson Loveland and stop Michigan from running the ball, this is a game that I think if you put up 20, 24, 27 points, I think you get out of Ann Arbor with a win.
Yeah, same. And that's a good enough transition as any to get us into Michigan. Like we said, the Michigan State game Saturday, 7:30. It's going to be on Big Ten Network. Yet another night game for the Spartans. Hopefully our last one for a little bit. I know the Indiana game is going to be a little bit earlier, and then potentially maybe a couple more earlier games before getting to Purdue. But yeah, we have the pets are excited for the game as well. But we have Michigan still early favorite, of course. It looks like from what I'm seeing, most places have the spread between 3.5 and 5. I know ESPN has it at 5 right now. And then I believe the over under was 39.5 last I looked. It's not very high. So, that's the matchup. Of course, it is in Ann Arbor for the first time since 2022 in Tunnel Gate, I guess, as we like to call it. But that will be what's on the docket for this week. A little bit of, rivalry history. Just, I'm sure we all know it. But Michigan's won the last two. State had won 2020 and 2021 before that. And then Michigan won the previous two before that. Going back even farther, that's when Michigan State was in its Coach D'Antonio heyday of winning a lot and a lot often. So, not to sugarcoat it, this is the biggest game on MSU schedule regular season-wise every year. We hate them. They hate us. They like to pretend that they don't hate us, but they hate us too. So it's big. Vibes around campus have been high. I know we've kind of gotten some former players, some former staff that would always get us hyped for the games. Coach D'Antonio's favorite speech. You can name 1,000 examples of what this game means to everybody. I did want to quickly throw in a quote from friend of the podcast, Matt Seibert. When I interviewed him earlier in the summer for Spartan Shadows, he did give kind of a quick answer to what makes this game so special. And I had also asked him if he had seen anything like it anywhere else in his athletic career. And he said he's never seen anything like it. And if he had to describe it, it's just something you can literally feel in the air. So there's not many things that you can feel, but this is one. It gives you goosebumps every time. The fact that the teams are 45 minutes away from each other, it's extremely personal. People grew up playing against each other. The fact that they being U of M always think they're better than us, and we kind of take that little brother badge on as a mantle and use it. So I know Matt's always pumped about this game. I am too, and there's no sugarcoating it. It's going to be a fun weekend. So what's some analysis you got for this weekend?
So, like Zach said, if MSU scores about 20, you should feel pretty confident. That was one of the key points I had written down also heading into this, was that if, in my opinion, first 1 to 20 probably wins. If anyone gets to 20 is a big if coming into this game, if I'm being honest. Another thing that's, just touching back on the Iowa game for a second, I would like to shout out Darius Snow, who had about 4 touchdown-saving tackles on special teams. And also that was, I believe, the first game I can remember witnessing as a student, a fan on TV, where the Spartans did not pause the game at any point for an injury timeout. So the team looks fully healthy heading into the game from what happened in almost any other game where we've had, okay, what's going to be, the next player out. Alante Brown was listed as questionable for the Iowa game too, so we might have another player back heading into Michigan. But yeah, first 1 to 20 wins. My concern for the team is I believe this game will be decided by Aiden Childs, because Michigan's defense nationally, they're better than Iowa this year, which that is a lot concerning when you factor in Michigan is number 9 in the nation against the run. Granted, this is not the same Michigan pass defense that benefited from potentially knowing play calls. I believe they are outside the top half of the nation in passing yards allowed. And this year, Michigan State has a fully entrenched quarterback who has been given the reins to the offense, which gives me a lot more hope. This is not going to be a game where we are trotting in Caden Hauser for his second or third career start, I believe. Michigan is entering this game off of a loss for their first time in over 10 years for sure. I believe it was 2008 or 2012 was the last time Michigan lost heading into this matchup. Yeah, I'm excited for this game. Both teams enter with identical records, both unranked for the first time since 2008. There is a lot to play for both teams. If Michigan loses this game, they likely have to steal a win against Indiana, Ohio State, or Oregon to make a bowl game. The Wolverines already have 3 losses. Loss to Michigan State makes it a very big uphill climb, which, I mean, as fans, that makes us root more for it. Not sure how much it impacts the state players. I'm sure that it has been realized by both state players and Michigan players that there is a lot to play for heading into this. Everyone wants to send home. Everyone wants to send their brother home earlier for the holidays, I think. So,
Absolutely. Big game for MSU too, because we had talked about our win paths too, and I know we had mentioned stealing one of the last 4 or 5 in Iowa being that. But if you, as the Spartans, can win against Michigan this week, then all of a sudden you're looking at needing 1, maybe 2 wins to for sure entrench yourself in a decent bowl game. And while we do still have Illinois and Indiana, we have Purdue and Rutgers too, which could be potentially winnable games at home down the stretch. So be very interesting to see exactly how it kind of shapes up. MSU's schedule was definitely more difficult in the front, and now you're having some luxuries of if you can steal 1 more win, you're putting yourself in a really good position to be bowl eligible and see where it goes, where now Michigan basically needs this win to put them in a good spot to still get to that bowl game. I know you mentioned Emmett, the first time since 2008, both teams were coming in unranked. Obviously, we know what happened in 2008 with Coach D'Antonio's famous "Pride comes before the fall" speech, and everything that happened after Mike Hart's 2007 comments. So it'll be interesting to see. My biggest takeaway and preview, I agree with you guys. It'll be really the run game in general, I guess is how I want to put it. Our ability to shut down both Donovan Edwards and I always mispronounce his name, Khalil Mullings. Those two are a very good 2-punch combo at running back. And if you can shut them down, that's really going to make Michigan's offense less effective. I don't want to rag and sound like too much of a fan about how bad the pass game's been for them, but it's been obvious. And even my Michigan friends that are super into Michigan football have joked with me about how bad their quarterback situation has been this year. So if you can shut down the run game, that gives you an opportunity to really be effective. And then vice versa for us, if we can establish any sort of run game against the Michigan run defense, that will go a long way about helping our offense. One thing I did see, I don't know if it's just, I guess, some rivalry gamesmanship or if it's actually going to shake out to be something to be interested in watching. Will Johnson, Michigan's all-everything corner, last I knew was still questionable for the game this week. I don't know if you guys heard of an update. I don't know exactly how injured he is. I don't want to speculate on anything, but that would be a big loss for Michigan's defense. Will Johnson's one of the best corners in the country. He's projected top 10 pick in the draft, and so that could be playing into some of this, but losing a piece like that would be a big loss for Michigan. Obviously, they still have the 2 defensive tackle monsters up front, but losing, their best outside coverage guy would really hinder their pass defense and maybe allow Aiden to be able to operate a little more freely in the pass game. So the run game on both sides of the ball, and then just limiting turnovers and penalties for us, like I say every week, but that's a big thing for us. So if Aiden can take care of the ball, if the offense can take care of the ball, and we can limit the drive-killing penalties, I think we're going to be in good shape for this.
Yeah, and I know that Will Johnson did not return to a game against Illinois after he got injured. Now, with that being said, I would be shocked if he doesn't play. Honestly, if he doesn't play, is it injury? Is he trying to maybe protect himself a little bit? Not trying to speculate at all there, but like I would be shocked if he doesn't play. Now regarding Will Johnson though, if I'm Michigan State, I am going the opposite direction of him basically all game. Now if Nick Marsh is on him or Jack Belling, fine, maybe take some shots, but we've seen it over and over this year. He's had at least 2 pick-sixes. But have them been kind of more curl routes that he jumps. Now, if he's not 100%, you kind of realize he's not 100%, maybe take a few chances at him, but it's just one of those things where you just have to respect him. And like you're saying, Chris, he's one of the best corners in the country. I think Travis Hunter's kind of the only one up there that you could maybe consider better than him. I think they're right there, both. But yeah, then it goes back to kind of that defensive line. You have Josiah Stewart, that is kind of their main defensive end that people really need to worry about. Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham are their two guys up the middle. They're going to be a handful. They're absolutely going to be a handful for this offensive line. Tanner Miller's going to have to be huge. He's going to have to be physical. He's going to have to win some of these battles, which is not going to be easy whatsoever against this defensive line. Michigan State's going to have to do a good job of avoiding third and longs, but one thing that Michigan has not been very good at is getting the other team off the field on third and long. So if Michigan State kind of gets to those points, I wouldn't necessarily be extremely concerned unless they're doing it quite often. Now, again, going to Aiden Childs, obviously he needs to protect the ball. I think Michigan State can afford maybe 1, maybe 2 turnovers in this game. Kind of just depends on what we do running the ball and on defense. But if you can kind of keep the offense down to at least 1 turnover in this game, I think there's a real possibility that Michigan State does win this game. But I think it has to do with running the ball. Nathan Carter has to be good. Karen Lynch-Adams has to be good. You have to get Montori Foster involved. You have to get Nick Marsh. Jack Belling, I need to see it get more involved as well. He's been more involved recently. So if we can get this offense to make big plays, which they have been able to do it all year, then there's a real chance that they're walking out of Ann Arbor with a win, which that win, like you're saying, Chris, that win means there's a real possibility of 7, 8 wins. Like there's 7, 8 wins right there. And if you're heading into the season, you're saying, hey, Michigan State's going to win 7 games. Michigan State's going to win 8 games under Jonathan Smith for the first year. I think any MSU fan would absolutely take that. 1, it means bowl, which means extra practice. But also 2 is in the first year of a rebuild under Jonathan Smith, you win 8 games. There's a possibility that you get Jack Belling back next year. Aiden Childs is going to be back next year. Tanner Miller's not going to be back next year. But then Nick, unless some transfers happen, which I really hope do not happen, I'm sure there will probably be some. That's just college football nowadays. But as long as you're able to protect your key players, and you look at next year's schedule is pretty friendly. You don't have to play Ohio State next year. You do not have to play Ohio State unless you make the Big Ten championship for 2 years. If you're going to make a run at it, not saying it has to be next year, but if you can start with 7, 8 wins or even go to a bowl game this year, it's a young team. It's going to really jumpstart this, and if you can get the win against Michigan, maybe it means Sharon Moore isn't back next year for Michigan, possibly. Kind of depends on maybe being a little bit too harsh there, but I don't think Michigan fans would necessarily want him back next year if they don't make a bowl game and lose this game. But if you're a State fan,
it's trending that way.
I was just going to say, if you're a State fan, don't want to say too early. I'm not going to say that. Not going to go there just because I feel like we've been there before and don't want to give them anything at that point. But big game, just take care of the ball, run the ball as efficiently as you can. If we run the ball for 200 yards, MSU is winning this game. That is a fact. It doesn't matter unless Michigan can run the ball for that amount. If Michigan State has the most rushing yards in this game, they win this game. That's just what Michigan has been.
Yeah, that's been a stat for however many years, too. I mean, 9 times out of 10 in this rivalry, whoever controls the rushing game wins the game. Just so something to focus on.
I almost wonder, this is a little bit of a side note. Today, which is Thursday, Jonathan Smith announced the practice squad players of the week. I almost wonder if this was a bit of gamesmanship from Smith. He announced long snapper Jack Carson Wentz as the as one of the special teams players of the week, which long snapper as special teams player of the week against anyone other than Michigan, you question. Obviously, we all know a game where a certain long snapper may have had an issue and the punter couldn't pick up the snap.
Mm-hmm.
So just a side fun note there. But like Zach was saying, if Michigan State rushes for 200 yards, this game is likely a blowout, in my opinion. That said, I think Michigan State will be very lucky to hit 115, 120 yards rushing. If they can hit 115 or 120 rushing without Aiden Child's legs, then I feel extremely confident. If you factor in Aiden Child's legs, I would say 135, 150 becomes the goal. It's all a matter of how this team can handle the defensive interior. Also of note, Rayshon Benny, a former Michigan State commit who flipped to the Wolverines on signing day, he was out against Illinois, has 1.5 sacks, and I believe quite a few tackles for loss this year. He is a crucial the third member of the defensive interior. That could pay dividends for the Spartans if Rayshon Benny's not good to go, with it being arguably one of the biggest games of the year, the biggest or second biggest, depending on which Michigan player you ask. I'm assuming everyone who has been listed on their injury report as out is going to be playing, because this is the game that if you can play, you're going to play. These teams have no love lost for each other. For the Spartans, the goal is going to have to be also on offense, depending on which quarterback's in, contain Colston Loveland. If Loveland can work against Cal Halliday, or if Wayne Matthews, Jordan Turner, someone gets lost in coverage, that could very well lead to a 25, 30-yard play, could result in a huge touchdown and give all the momentum to Michigan. So one of my keys is going to be always key off, find Colston Loveland on every play. Because if they're running the ball, there's a very good chance they're going to try to run behind Loveland. If they're passing the ball, there is a very good chance, with the lack of weapons in the receiver room, they're going to target Loveland. If you see Halliday or I would say Angelo Gross against Loveland, I think Michigan is going to go that way, because those two struggled in the loss last season against whoever they were matched up with. It seemed like that person got the target.
Yeah. And that's the point. And I hate to sound like the broken record, but with Michigan's defense, I don't think people realize just how good the defensive interior is with Mason Graham and the two defensive tackles and Will Johnson. In most mock drafts are projected top 10 picks this year, somewhere around that area. So, and you add in Colston Loveland, who's getting other first-round love in mock drafts. You have 4 or 5 players on Michigan's team that are bona fide round 1 NFL talents. And while that's a lot, and there are definitely people to key into, I think you can exploit certain matchups to help mitigate those players, especially the defensive interior. And it's going to start with maybe doing a couple more RPOs, a couple more design runs with Aiden to get him outside and maybe get some blocking set up to where you're running away from them and not letting them wreck the game, a la how you saw teams used to attack the Rams with Aaron Donald, things like that. So it's something that I think could be easily, I don't want to say easily, but schemed against, because it's just something that that's there in matchups, because unfortunately if you're a Michigan fan, other players on the roster haven't been stepping up. So, I mean, football's a game of matchups. Attack the matchups you think are most favorable. We've kind of keyed them in. Hopefully they can execute and bring Paul home, which is the main goal of this week. Paul spent too much time in that godforsaken town, so he needs to be back in East Lansing. So, any other matchups you guys wanted to touch on real quick or anything like that?
Not really that I can think of. Also, Chris, just a side note, we're probably going to be cutting this one, but cutting this small afterthought, but Ant said he's binging a show right now. Drop the link just in case. So I'm kind of leaning towards probably not. But anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're good.
Yeah.
So
Well, there's really no other matchups I think that we really kind of need to really talk about. I think we talked about a lot of the kind of the big ones, the offensive line. It's just kind of that front seven defensively for Michigan, that front seven for us as well. It's just basically the lines. Who's going to be more physical? Who's going to be better in this game? Is Aiden Childs going to protect the ball? And if Aiden Childs protects the ball and Michigan State can stop the run, I think it's going to be one of those games that in the fourth quarter they have a shot. And I think if going into this year, I think that's all MSU fans wanted is a shot. And that's where I think we are all three of us are at is I think we're all going to give Michigan State a shot in this game, and that's where I want to kind of lead to the next little thing is what are you guys' prediction? Does Michigan State have a shot? Do they win this game?
I can kick us off. They absolutely have a shot, and I'm going to say they do win the game. I don't normally feel comfortable picking them to. I'm trying not to sound like the homer, but I've just seen no resemblance of life in Michigan's pass game of late. And if there's one thing that I know teams could steadily exploit MSU's defense is in the pass game. So not saying it's impossible. I've seen stranger things happen in this game before, but I guess it's kind of until I can see it. I don't know if there's life left in that pass game, so I don't know who's starting at quarterback. If it's Alex Orji, I'm not worried about him throwing the ball. If it's Jack Tuttle, I mean, he has some talent. His arm strength might be a little bit over the hill because he's, going to be applying for his AARP discount soon. But other than that, I'm just kidding. But I haven't seen the resemblance of life in the Michigan pass game. Don't get me wrong, Donovan Edwards and Mullins can run the ball, and that does scare me. But provided Aiden doesn't go nuclear with turnovers and we really shoot ourselves in the foot, I think MSU can go in and get this win. And we've shown we haven't had issues competing in Ann Arbor in recent history either, for the most part. So I will take MSU, and I'll go 24-17. We'll go 24-17, somewhere there. First touchdown scorer, give me Nick Marsh on about a 60-yard touchdown pass.
well, that's a bold one. I feel pretty confident about this game. At the same time, would I normally feel confident enough to pick a Michigan State victory? Probably not. When I was talking in a group chat with Matt Seibert about that, I was actively entertaining him like, I think I might pick Michigan to win in the podcast. His response was, you can't do that. If Michigan State only dressed 9 players, I would still predict them to win. So that said, I'm going to project, I think, under on points, but I would say 20-17 because I believe it was, 38.5?
39.5.
39.5, yeah. 20-17 feels very much Jonathan Kim game, Jonathan Kim legacy game maybe. And I would say the first points are going to be a Jonathan Kim field goal if we're being real.
Yeah.
But I would say first touchdown, another newcomer to this rivalry, I would say K'Ron Lynch-Adams on rushing.
I like that. I like that pick a lot. I'm going with the Michigan State win. Same thing with you guys. I don't necessarily love picking Michigan State in this game. I am, though. I think it's going to be a little bit more higher scoring. I think it's going to be like 24-20. I think Michigan State ends up getting the win. I have a few choices I'm really thinking of. I kind of have an out-of-the-box choice, but my out-of-the-box choice would actually be Alante Brown coming back in this game and getting the first touchdown. Would be really interesting. With that being said, do I think that happens? Probably not. Watch it actually happen. It would be actually kind of funny. But going to go with Jack Velling scoring his first touchdown of the year. Just give me one, man. I've been on this bandwagon all year, and I'm going to continue to get on the bandwagon. He's scoring a touchdown this week. I said that last week against Iowa. He's been more involved. Just get me in the red zone, get me lined up against one of those linebackers or safeties, and just find a way to score a touchdown. Honestly, just scoring a touchdown in this game for him would be great. He scored 8 or 9 last year. He hasn't had one this year. Like, come on. Like, his time is here, and it's coming.
It is due. It is absolutely due. And I like your Alante Brown pick. I do think in general you're going to see a lot of Will Johnson if he plays kind of shadowing Nick Marsh as much as possible. Not all the time, but as much as he can. And so that's really going to key in on either Montori or if Alante Brown plays, whoever the other receiver is, to hopefully maybe be able to exploit some matchups. So I like it. If he plays, that might be a good outside shot at I don't know if you can bet that on DraftKings, but maybe there's some money on that because it might be worth a big payday. So
yeah, it's probably like plus like 1,000 at least if he plays.
Yeah. So speaking of bettors, if you were wise enough to take MSU over their season win total, a win this week would cash that over. So another thing at stake for the game this week. So. But that about wraps it up for our Michigan recap preview. It's our favorite time of the year. Emmett will be in enemy territory, live tweeting from the press box. So we do want to shout out U of M Athletics for allowing Emmett to do that. So rivalry banter aside, we appreciate the opportunity to send Emmett into enemy lines. So keep in touch with all of us on the socials and our podcast socials. We'll try to update as much as we can. We'll be back next week for our regular episode recapping the Michigan fun and then getting ready for, is it Indiana next? I believe it's Indiana next. So
then a bye week right after that too.
Yep. So one more bye still. Indiana, another tough test. They're playing really good football. Not quite sure they're playing the competition level that some of the other Big Ten schools have, but we'll break into that more next week. So we appreciate
that to Nebraska happen, man.
Yeah, that's true. They looked real impressive last week against Nebraska. So we'll get into that more, I'm sure. We appreciate everybody tuning in. Thank you for watching us as always. If you have any questions for us, shoot us an email. All of our socials are going to be in the bios as well. So like, subscribe, follow. We appreciate it. Go green. And for heaven's sake, please bring Paul back to East Lansing because we miss him dearly. So we appreciate you guys. Have a good evening. Go green.